Hello, I am Mystic, and it's great to meet you. Thanks for stopping by to watch my video, even though it only has 3 plays. What that says to me is that you're someone who trusts your own opinion. You don't need there to be a million views on something to know that it's valuable to you. Who is this person that's watching this video? What do I know about them? They're motivated, they're smart, they are in midlife, they are considering what's available to them. They're wanting more possibility for their life. Hi, I am Mystic. I left my career last year. I've been a designer for 25 years. And in that time, I did some amazing things. I had a blast. I worked for a lot of huge companies. I worked for small companies, big companies. I helped a company reach a massive acquisition. And I basically gave myself away in the process to hostile and even at times abusive leaders who I thought were brilliant in saving the world. Obviously, I was in the tech industry and I got tired of giving myself away. So I left my career last year and I'm now a full-time creator. That sounds funny, but that's basically what I've been working at doing. And so I grew an audience. I grew an audience of like 30,000 people on different platforms just since last year because I wanted to learn how to do it. And I realized that if you have an audience, it's basically a key to, it'll open a door to anything. And through growing an audience of only 30,000, which is pretty easy, anyone can do that. Through growing an audience of that size, I've been able to connect with people all over the world. I found collaborators, been hired for consulting gigs and advisory roles. And my options seemed very limited last year when I was in my career. And something inside of me said, there's something else available to you. And I didn't quite believe it at the time. And so I decided not to look for another job and just set my mind to understanding how this thing called the creator economy works. And the creator economy is basically people like you and me just creating content online, telling our story, talking about what we're all about, connecting, because people are more eager today than ever before to connect with real people. And if you're selling products, if you want to build a business and sell stuff, people are more eager to buy from other individuals than ever before because people are realizing the downside of investing in companies that look like they're doing good on the surface, but in reality are actually ruining our society and our planet in many ways as well. And that's the story of my career. And let me know if you relate, but it was like kind of giving myself to these corporate employers for many years, thinking I was doing the most noble thing that I could be doing. Our family, we took a trip to the Railroad Museum recently, and it reminded me of, the old times. I used to go work on the railroad. When the railroads across America were being built, it was this real noble job to go and work on the railroad. I've been working on the railroad, just like the song, right? And what was really happening was it was sort of like manipulation by the elites. It was basically 4 guys who got incredibly rich off the railroads and everyone else struggled. Substandard wages and living conditions, and hundreds, maybe thousands of people died building the railroads. And it just made me think a lot about the tech industry, how it's a similar thing where it's all sorts of people like myself, like good, honest, smart, talented, creative, hardworking people who come into this industry and these big companies. And I was at a couple of the really big companies, and you're like, this is great. I work for company X, and your whole family is like, oh, wow, you've come so far. And I remember having old college friends message me on LinkedIn, and they'd be like, wow, you've done really well because you're at that company. Come to realize it's a crock of shit, to put it bluntly. And this past year, it's been more clear than ever. And I won't go into detail why that is, but if you know, you know. Just look at what's happening in our beautiful country. But I see part of it as that a lot of us really bought in to the vision of big tech saving the world. And I know I did, and I poured my energy and my heart and everything I had into it. I spent about the past 10 years in tech. Before that, I was in advertising, and I had a blast. I loved the advertising industry. Good morning. But I'm going on a bit of a ramble here, but this is the kind of thing I'm probably going to be talking a lot more about and talking more articulately about. So if you relate on this and you're interested in this topic, please follow along, because I've got some things to talk about here that are that I feel strongly about, and there's a lot of conversations I want to have that I don't really see a lot of people having. And I've also got a unique perspective, because I'm a guy who wound up in the world of big tech without ever having planned on being in that world. Maybe this will find some others in a similar position, but I found my way into big tech because I helped build a startup that got acquired by a tech giant. And so those of us who have come in through that route, we're the types of people who never imagined going to the world of big tech. And you get into big tech, and then there's people in that world, or people coming into that world who is their lifelong dream to work at, insert name of company everyone knows. And it's a little bit weird, but it's what drinking the Kool-Aid's all about. But I got to see it from sort of an outsider perspective. And by the way, I guess I should add that I'm intentionally anonymous. Mystic isn't my birth name, but I go by Mystic, and I am the Midlife Mystic. And I'll tell you the story of how the Midlife Mystic came to be another time. But one of the reasons that I want to be anonymous is, there's a lot to it, and I'll talk more about it another time. But one thing is I want to be able to talk very openly about my experiences in tech industry. And I played a big role in building a startup to $1 billion valuation. We reached over 30 million customers. And I was there almost from the very beginning, not from the very, very beginning, but from pretty early on. And I learned so much in that journey. And our CEO, in hindsight, is what I would call abusive. And I worked for other leaders in my time in that industry that I would also consider abusive and hostile. And I had to do some healing around that. I had to do a lot of healing around the experiences I had, because I minimized myself at the time. I sat in an open office space with fucking instant messaging apps firing every 5 fucking seconds. And, managers asking me, I don't know, just stupid shit. Upper management changing the fucking direction all the time, not knowing what they wanted to do, pushing hard for a particular arbitrary deadline for a particular feature that no one had ever really asked for, but for some reason seemed to be a priority. And it's like, okay, I guess they know what they're doing. And sometimes they did, but a lot of the time it was just fucking running on a treadmill, and then there's the whole thing with stock options and stock grants, which a lot of people will say, well, you're very lucky to have had that. And I agree. But the flip side of that, if you've been in a position where your salary a part of your salary is based on stock option grants, then you understand that really what they are is carrots and sticks, because you end up staying in the job because of all the money you might be able to make down the road when all your stock grants vest and when the stock has doubled in price again or even quadrupled. And you're kind of living on this dream of like, this job's gonna make me rich. Well, I spent, I would say, probably 10 years in jobs that were gonna make me rich. This is after I got married and had a family. My wife left her career, or I should say took a step back from her career so she could focus on raising the kids. And then I got really disciplined and focused. Up until I got married, I'd been a designer for about 15 years at that point, and I'd worked freelance. I'd done a lot of work in advertising. I'd been in like animation, art direction. I worked for a lot of the big ad agencies. Hold on, let me get past the freeway. Okay, I'm in the park now. I don't know if you can still hear the freeway behind me, but I have to kind of walk past the freeway to get into this beautiful park near where I live. And just a great place where I love walking. And hey, so I just got this gimbal that I'm using right now, and you can see my mic right here. So I'm trying to do this decently, and that's another thing I can talk about, is like how I'm doing this logistically, what I'm using. And one of my goals is to create video. I want to start creating video content, but I'm not going to like go hog wild and just spending a ton of money on gear to create really good quality. I want to make the quality be in what I share and what I talk about and what I present, and try to get creative with cinematography and shooting techniques and editing techniques without spending money. Because one of the things I want to do here is show other people, teach other people how to walk the path that I've walked. And so I'll get back to what I was saying earlier, which is about having an audience. And so I realized that if you grow an audience online, it sort of unlocks a world of possibility. And it's a great way to, if you want to get out of your career, or if you're out of your career and you're trying to figure out what's next, or you're trying to figure out how to not go back to working for someone else, grow an audience. It's the way to do it. And you know, you can even see me here if you want to follow my journey, going from scratch. At the time of this recording, I have like 70 something subscribers, and it's from an old channel that I've had from when I was trying to pursue a music career years and years ago. Follow my journey, because I've learned sort of the mechanics of how to grow online. I don't want to sound arrogant about it, but you know, every platform's a little different. But one of the reasons I'm coming here to YouTube to do stuff is for greater depth. I think this is the place where people are interested in more meaningful conversations. And like I said, I went on social media and grew followings on social media platforms because that was a way. And by the way, I also built a business. So I built an online business where I sell programs related to the same kinds of things I'm going to talk about here. And so I use social media to drive people to my programs, and that way you don't have to spend money on advertising. So it's really awesome. There is a world of possibility. And I remember when I left my career watching videos from people who were like, I just travel the world and make money on autopilot and I don't have to work anymore and la-di-la. And I'm like, that sounds fucking both amazing and ridiculous at the same time. Like, you're completely lying to me, but I really want to believe that you're not, because I want to believe that my life could be a lot easier than it feels right now, because at the time it just felt really fucking hard. And I was pushing really hard in my career, to get ahead. And my work was a struggle every day. Just to stay focused was a struggle. And I, got all the prescriptions and the medications and did every routine and tried every supplement. And, I think one of the other things I'll be talking about is how much I thought the problem was me. How much I thought I lacked discipline and I lacked focus or the right skill set. So I had to work extra hard to prove myself, come to realize, no, actually, the problem was fucking open office spaces, like I mentioned. It was instant messaging apps. It was performance reviews. It was the carrots and sticks where you're always focused on the future. And so, in short, I realized the problem wasn't me trying to focus all these years when ultimately what I arrived at is actually I don't have focus issues. I was just trying to put my energy and my attention on things that weren't all that interesting to me. And that speaks to what I was mentioning earlier about sort of neglecting my own judgment, neglecting my own perspective. Where are you neglecting your own perspective? Where do you have a sensibility that's not being honored? Because in a career, it's easy to dismiss that stuff as like I had imposter syndrome for the longest time. I was like, I'm not a very good designer because it's so hard for me to do things successfully within this system. I didn't see it that way at the time. I just saw myself as not able to keep up and deliver as well as I would have liked it. And I did pretty well too, but it never felt like enough. Check out these deer. Hi. Hello. So I've got a lot of stuff that I'm excited to talk about and share about. And if you're someone in a similar position to where I was, burned out in your career, hungry for something else, and you're like, I know there's got to be something else available to me, but I don't see it from my current vantage point. That's the key, is that you don't see it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so if you're here watching this, if this somehow popped up in your feed and you ended up watching, consider this a sign that there's something else available to you. There's a whole other life waiting for you. And I'm really excited. Sorry that this video was a little incoherent and all over the place, but my goal is to keep doing this. I decided to try taking a stab at making a daily video and kind of see where it goes. I would love to find my tribe, find some cool people to connect with. Would love to hear in the comments if anyone made it all the way to the end of this, and I will be here. I'll be showing up. I'll be doing the work and telling my story, talking about, I want to back to one of the things I was saying about being anonymous is I want to speak very openly about some of my experiences. I worked for a CEO who I was one of the people in the early stage company who, when we had investors come through the office, I'd put up things on the wall to cover places where he'd punched holes in the walls in fits of rage. And I swear to you, he acted abusively towards all of us. We didn't see it at the time because we were like, it's just the way he is. He's like a Steve Jobs type character. But no, I think we need to start being more honest about calling out abuse for what it is. And when someone who has the power to take your livelihood away is yelling at you in any way in front of other people, or diminishing you or demeaning you or leading you to feel like you're inconsequential through their behavior, I call that abuse, and I think that's important. And it doesn't make you a victim to call out that type of behavior for what it is. I think it's important to identify it, and sometimes we don't identify it because we're like, well, what the fuck do I do now? But it's important to identify it so that you can begin to formulate a plan for what's next. And I think there's a lot of different levels of that type of thing that happen in a lot of corporate spaces where people have it's become like dehumanized. And so I'm here partly to help people find their way back to worthiness again, because a lot of us had careers that devalued and diminished and even damaged us. And so, I got the luxury of being able to commit to taking some time to heal from that kind of stuff. And I found my way back to thinking clearly again, to seeing all of it clearly. And I see more clearly than ever before in my life how I got programmed by the corporate machine, and how a lot of us do, and how that programming kind of conditions us to see a limited set of possibilities. It sort of narrows the scope of what we can see. It narrows our field of view. And so we then don't see all the possibilities that are available to us, and we're grinding away in the job day after day because we're like, this is what I've got to do to get ahead, to get to the senior level, the next role, whatever the next position is, and you're caught on this hamster wheel of moving forward and trying to survive, because now it seems more scary than ever if you've been in a job for a while and you're at risk of losing it because of AI, or because you're getting older like I was, and you're like, all the young talent is so hungry and sharp and ready to work 20 hours a day, and it pushes you to go harder. And that's bullshit. No one needs to live like that. And one of the messages I'm going to be talking about, and that I do talk about a lot in my newsletter, I have a newsletter on Substack. I'll link that below if any of you are interested. And one of the things I talk about is how you don't have to do that. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. And especially if you are someone like me who had a career for decades, you're fucking smart. If you've had a career for, I would say, anywhere more than 10 years, you don't need to, I'm pretty sure that you don't need to get a job to make a livelihood, to make a living. This is the conclusion I've come to. And it's based on a lot of things, and I'll be talking a lot more about it. And I'll also be talking about the logistics, the practical skills that you need in order to make it happen. And so one of the things I talk about in my Substack is there's 5 core skills that you need if you want to make a living without a job. Basically, it's the same skills to succeed in business, and the skills include communication, which relates to understanding marketing and branding and even understanding psychology. That's kind of the first core skill. The second is creativity and design, and how those things play out in business. So you don't have to be a good designer, but you have to have an understanding of design. What does design even mean? And how can you leverage an understanding of design to your own benefit? And that includes lifestyle design, by the way, because you're entitled to design your own life. And if you want to design your own business, you should design your business in a way that is conducive to the type of life that you want to live. Okay. And I talk about meditation. Meditation is an essential tool to every business owner. This is getting way longer than I'd planned. I literally planned to make this a 5-minute video, but once I start talking, sometimes it's hard for me to stop. But I've got a lot to share, and I'm excited to share it, and that's why I'm doing this. And if you're watching, if you're stumbling across this, and you're like, this guy's interesting, but he's super rambly and it's really hard to follow him. I promise you every video, I will get better, I'll get more concise. Let me know if there's anything you have questions about, if there's anything I've mentioned that you have questions about. And thanks for dropping by. I'm trying to remember if there's anything I mentioned that I didn't, any topics I didn't kind of close off. Sometimes I jump around a lot when I'm talking about something. But I think the main thing here was just to kind of say, hey, what's up? Hopefully this finds some cool people, tell my story, let you know that if you're struggling, if you're burned out, if you feel like there's not much available to you. I felt that way last year, and there's a world of possibility available to you. And I'm excited to teach you everything I've learned in the last year. And I'm only a year ahead of you. But in that time, I've built a successful internet business, selling courses and programs that are based on my own expertise in my career. And basically the main point of it is I'm doing things I love doing. I'm doing things that are easy and enjoyable and that I can do while I'm walking on a hiking trail. And it's a whole new way of living. And that's what it means to be a creator, is where you just kind of get engaged in life again. You come alive again. Like Howard Thurman, was it Howard Thurman, who said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. But it's more true than ever. And that's what being a creator is all about. It's about coming alive. It's about getting engaged in life again. It's about getting into your body, getting out of the programs that led you to live in a way that wasn't in alignment with who you are at the deepest levels, and just sharing that journey, just like what I'm doing here, just talking about what you're up to and who you are. And probably you have something valuable to share. And for me, that's talking about business through all my experiences as a designer over 25 years, basically seeing companies get built from sort of the front row and having a unique vantage point to a lot of different types of companies over a lot of years. And I bet some of you will be in a similar position where you spent a lot of years in a lot of different companies, and it was probably a masterclass in a lot of what to do to grow a company, but also a masterclass in a lot of what not to do. And when you reach a certain point, when you reach midlife or whatever it is for you, and you decide, you know what, I want to do my own thing. Well, guess what? You can do your own thing. You don't need to be a megalomaniac, asshole, and aggressive, super alpha to run a company. You just have to be you. And anyone can have their own company. And it's easier than it's ever been. And you don't have to have investors. You don't have to have employees. And you can start today. And it just starts with the belief that it's possible. And it starts with deciding what you would want it to look like and knowing that you don't have to have anyone else's permission. You don't need anyone else's permission. You don't need anyone else to believe it's possible. I believe it's possible. I know it's possible. And so I'm excited to help you also start believing it's possible, because that's the first step. That's how you start today. That's how you start today. It's not that you go buy some program on how to get to 1,000 overnight. You simply choose to believe that something else is possible. That's it. Believe something else is possible, because it is. And then from there, you can start deciding what it looks like. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I hope you have a great day.